Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast for our final segment of the day, where we are going to be diving into some of the storylines from NHL free agency. As all of that was taking place yesterday, I wanted to sort of wait on it and see what the situation was surrounding some of these big deals. And obviously the eye-popping biggest story in the National Hockey League is the Nashville Predators making moves, where they brought in three big name players, where they go after Steven Stamkos, Brady Shea, and Jonathan Marchessault. And this was a little bit unexpected from a Predators team that in the past couple years, granted, has been at least in the realm of being competitive, but this past season just not good enough, and they ended up being a first round exit. So they pour a lot of attention into this upcoming season. Now, obviously, out of this group, the number one most surprising thing is the fact that we are seeing the end of the era of Steven Stamkos in Tampa Bay, where he was the first overall pick for them in 2008. He became the all-time points leader in Lightning history with 1,044. And, you look at a recent expansion franchise in Tampa Bay, Stamkos has been there through really all of the biggest moments in franchise history. And he's played in just about 45% of all-time Lightning games. So he ends up leaving in free agency, which is, again, you talk about Klay Thompson and the years that he spent in Golden State on the NBA side of this. Another really hard ending for two parties that saw a lot of success with one another. Stamkos, as he built up, the first 16 years of his likely Hall of Fame career, was able to win 2 Stanley Cup trophies with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and ultimately it just ends like this again in a little bit of an unfortunate way. The reports were that the Lightning were sort of lowballing Stamkos during these contract negotiations for a good while now, and he is ultimately chasing the money, where he's going to get $8 million a year in Nashville. Sort of a no-brainer move here, especially considering the offer from Tampa was reported to be somewhere closer to the $2 million a year mark. And he, at 36 years old, Stamkos, or 34 years old, I should say, he is going to try and take advantage of all the money he can possibly get at this point. And, again, for Stamkos, probably ends his time in Tampa as, I would argue, maybe the best player to ever suit up for Tampa Bay, at least the greatest overall legacy with the team. Now, Martin St. Louis, you can throw into that conversation as well. But, the end of a historic run here for Stamkos in Tampa Bay. Feels like he should have retired a member of the Lightning. But who knows, maybe we'll see him swing back around at some point as he's on his way out of the league. But they also get Brady Shea, of course, who was a defenseman for the Carolina Hurricanes for the past couple years, and also pick up on Jonathan Marchessault, who was one of 2 players from Vegas's championship winning team of 2023 that left in free agency. Chandler Stevenson went to the Kraken, but Marchessault, the Conn Smythe winner in 2023, he ends his little brief tenure there with Vegas, but definitely had some highs in there. So we're going to see some changes from Vegas, who feels like they probably had a little bit of a better opportunity than they gave themselves a chance to. Came into this past year's playoffs a little bit underseeded and ultimately had to face off against a very difficult Dallas Stars team in the first round. They end up losing in 7 there, but I'm sure that there are definitely Knights fans out there that feel like they could have better capitalized on this past year. But that is it for them. We will see how they're able to respond next year. But for Nashville, this was a very big day for them, obviously, where postseason didn't go the way they wanted. They've at least been sort of inching their way back into contention once again over these past couple years, but ultimately, they provide the spike, bringing in 3 real impact players and sort of at least winning the day in terms of all of the headlines. But I want to shift gears a little bit here to the other side of the NHL in the Florida Panthers, of course, the reigning champions, checking in on their moves. They brought Sam Reinhart back on an 8-year extension, and obviously, Reinhart has been an incredible pickup for them, where for a couple years there, he was one of the, better assets in terms of value of what they got him for when they traded for him. I believe it was when he, from Buffalo, where he had spent the majority of his career playing there up to that point, and now last year in his age 28 season has a career year with 57 goals, 94 points, and was incredible for them in the postseason as well. Came up in multiple big moments there, so that was a nice signing there. They did lose Brandon Montour, who walked in free agency. He signed with the Seattle Kraken, so we had just mentioned the fact that they got Chandler Stevenson. They were able to pick up Brandon Montour as well, where the defenseman got 7 years, $50 million from Seattle. I can understand sort of the situation here for the Panthers of just kind of having to let him go at this point, being headed into his age 30 season, getting 7 years on the deal. The Panthers still feel like they are going to be in a very competitive place next year, and probably for years to come with this Reinhart extension. And ultimately, I don't think it would have made sense for them to overpay with the situation going on with Montour, so they let him go as the Kraken make another move there. But also in the Eastern Conference, and a team that the Panthers saw on their way to winning the Stanley Cup Finals this past year, the Boston Bruins made a couple moves. My team, of course, being from Boston. They signed Elias Lindholm to a 7-year deal worth $54.25 million. This had been sort of thrown out there for a good bit, and ultimately it comes to fruition. They get the runner-up of the 2022 Selke Trophy. He had a down season last year offensively when he was traded from the Flames to the Canucks, but he played better in the postseason. That sort of limited some of the concerns there. He had 10 points in 13 games, and the Bruins were in desperate need of getting some improved center play on the first couple lines ever since Patrice Bergeron retired, headed into last season, and they just didn't have enough talent on those top couple lines. Now, there is definitely a little bit of questions there in terms of, is Lindholm capable of being your top line center? That's something that the Bruins are going to have to find out. But ultimately, this was a position of need for them, and they ultimately attacked it. They also signed Lindholm's teammate from last year, Nikita Zadorov, to a 6-year deal worth $5 million per season. This is actually now the 3rd different team that Lindholm and Zadorov will be teammates on. It was previously the Flames. Both were traded to the Canucks on separate deals, and now both of them signed free agent deals with the Bruins. So a couple nice pickups there for the Bruins. Now, in all of this action, actually, outside of free agency, the Bruins and Canucks also saw a swap where the Bruins traded Jake DeBrusk to the Canucks. So, an interesting move here. It's going to be a 7-year deal for DeBrusk worth $5.5 million annually. DeBrusk, he had a little bit of an up and down tenure when he was with Boston throughout his career, and there were some, questions as to his level of commitment to the team. He requested a trade, of course, a couple years ago, and ultimately they were able to iron things out for a couple good seasons from DeBrusk. But I can understand the reason why the Bruins organization didn't necessarily want to pay him long term. Now, that's not to say this is a bad move for Vancouver, where DeBrusk is still a very talented player. And obviously there was sort of some personality stuff that didn't necessarily seem like a match between the Bruins and specifically it was when Bruce Cassidy was their head coach. But, even still, just a little bit of butting of heads over the years there. So DeBrusk gets a little bit of a fresh start in Vancouver, and again, a very talented player, so not a bad move for the Canucks either. Couple final notes here. Patrick Kane returning to the Detroit Red Wings. Seemed like he was on his way out at the end of the season. Was a pretty brief stint for him in Detroit, and coming off of that last game of the year, he was potentially hinting at saying his goodbyes to Detroit and the organization. There were a lot of rumors about him ending up with the New York Rangers, but he comes back to Detroit, which obviously, just for the legacy of Patrick Kane, is always going to be notable. And then we also saw the New Jersey Devils sort of build up their defense a little bit with a couple signings. Brett Pesce, and it was Brendan Dillon that they brought in. So a couple potential top-liner defensemen that the Devils ultimately went after. But, still a lot to track down here in the NHL free agency as well. A lot of things to dive into, but we are running out of time here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. Kelsey commented, "Are you on Twitter?" You can check my personal Twitter out. Not extremely active, but would like to eventually get more active as the years go on. You can look at Mabardy TJ, that is Mabardy TJ, if you want to check us out there. Of course, also be sure to check out the GSMC Sports Network on socials as well, where you can see some of our more exclusive short content. So definitely be sure to check us out there. But that is all we have time for today. Thank you very much for tuning into the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thank you to the GSMC Sports Network for allowing us to host this show. Remember to like, follow, subscribe wherever you keep up with us. Thank you to all of our viewers for tuning in, and we will be back tomorrow afternoon at 2:00 p.m. Eastern, so we will see you then. Take care. Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't that